Hey everybody, sorry I missed you guys on Friday. I don't know if you can see this giant thing behind me, but I ended up spending most of Friday putting that together. Mrs. Wilder had a project for me, so I got to work on that Friday. But I'm going to read a little extra today to make up for some of what we missed. So we left off, Omri was getting ready to take the little guys to school with him. So they were having breakfast and he was getting his first chance taking him downstairs to breakfast with him. He said it was like getting ready to take him to school. Breakfast in his house was often a dicey meal anyway, with everybody more or less bad-tempered. You guys get like that in the morning? I think I've said that before. People are grumpy at breakfast for some reason because they don't want to get up and get moving. Today, for instance, Adil had lost his football shorts and was blaming everybody in turn, and their mother had just discovered that Gillen, contrary to his assurances the night before when he wanted to watch television, had not actually finished his homework. Their father was grumpy because he had wanted to do some gardening and it was raining again. "I know, I put them in the laundry basket," Adil was saying fretfully. "If you did, I washed them, in which case they're back in your top drawer," said his mother. "But you didn't because I did it and they're not. Now listen to me, Gillen. It's only a bit of history. One mini little castle to draw and a tiny paragraph to write," said Gillen. "I can do it at school." "Ah, stinkin' climate," muttered their father. "These onion sets will rot if I don't get them in the ground soon." "Gillen, did you borrow them? I've got my own." Omri ate his cereal in silence, grinning to himself, hugging his secret. He slipped a couple of cornflakes into his pockets. "I bet Omri took 'em," said Adil suddenly. Omri looked up. "Took what?" "My shorts." "What on earth would I want your shorts for?" "It might be your idea of a joke to hide them," Adil retorted. This was not as outrageous as it sounds. It had, until very recently, been a common form of revenge when Adil or Gillen was especially unbearable for Omri to sneak some valuable possession and hide it. Now, however, Omri felt very far away from such babyishness and quite insulted. "Don't be stupid," he said. You guys ever have that? Somebody in your family accuses you of taking something, or sometimes I'll do that. "Oh, they must have gotten put in the washing." It's my own fault if I don't put my stuff in the hamper, but you guys know how that goes. "So you did," said Adil in triumph. "I did not. You're red in the face. That's proof you're guilty." "I swear," said Omri. "They're probably under your bed," said their mother to Adil. "Go up and have a look." "I have looked. I've looked everywhere." "Oh my goodness, it's starting to hail now," said their father despairingly. "So much for the apple blossom." Under cover of the moans that went up and about the prospect of no apples in the autumn, and the exclamations about the size of the hailstones, Omri slipped his coat on and ran through the bouncing ice lumps to school. On the way, he stopped under a protecting yew tree and took the little men out. He showed each of them a large hailstone, which to them was the size of a football. Now, when they say football, here they're not talking about football like American football with an oval shape. They're talking about what we would call a soccer ball. "Now, when we get to school," said Omri, "you must lie very still and quiet in my pockets. I'm putting you in separate ones because I can't risk fighting or quarreling. If you're seen, I don't know what will happen." "Danger?" asked Little Bear, his eyes gleaming. "Yes, not of death so much. You might be taken away from me. Then you'd be never given back to your own time." "You mean we'd never wake up out of this here drunken dream?" said Boone. "If that's how you look at it, no." But Little Bear was staring at him very thoughtfully. "Own time," he said musingly. "Very strange magic." Omri had never arrived at school with more apprehension in his heart, not even on spelling test days. And yet he was excited too. Once he had taken a white mouse to school in his blazer pocket. He'd planned to do all sorts of fiendish things with it, like putting it up on his teacher's trouser leg — he had a man teacher then — or down the back of a girl's neck, or just putting it on the floor and letting it run around and throw the whole class into chaos. He hadn't actually dared do anything with it except let it peep out and make his neighbors giggle a little bit. Can you imagine somebody bringing a mouse to school and putting it on the teacher? I don't think that would go very well at New View. I'd probably have a very unhappy face by the time I got done calling some parents. This time he had to peep out and let it peep out and make his neighbors giggle. This time he had no such plans. All he was hoping is that he could get through the day without anybody finding out. Patrick was waiting for him at the school gate. "Have you got him?" "Yes." His eyes lit up. "Give! I want him." "All right," said Omri, "but you have to promise that you won't show him to anybody." Omri reached into his right-hand pocket, closed his fingers gently around Boone, and passed him into Patrick's hand. The moment Omri had let go of him, things started to happen. A particularly nasty little girl named April, who had been right across the playground from the moment of the transaction, saw Patrick's side about 2 seconds, or was at Patrick's side about 2 seconds later. "What have you got there, then? What did he give you?" she asked in her raucous voice like a crow's. Patrick flushed red. "Nothing. Push off," he said. At once, April pointed her witchy finger at him. "Look at Patrick blushing! Look at Patrick blushing!" she squawked. Several other children speedily arrived on the scene, as a certain type of child will whenever somebody is being taunted. Taunted is another word for teased. And soon Patrick and Omri found themselves surrounded. "What's he got?" "I bet it's something horrid. I bet it's a slimy toad, a little wriggling worm more like, a beetle, like him. Ha ha ha." Omri felt his blood begin to get hot in his head. He longed to bash all of them one by one, or better yet, all at once. A giant knocking down hordes of enemies like skittles. He imagined them rolling backward down a long, wide flight of steps in waves bowled over by his flashing fist and flying feet. The best he could manage in reality, though, was to lower his head and keep his hand cupped stiffly over his left pocket. Barged through the chanting circle, he caught one of them a good butt in the stomach. It means a bump. It was rather satisfying. Patrick was hot on his heels, and they belted across the playground and in through the double doors, which fortunately had just opened. Once inside, they were relatively safe. There were teachers all over the place, and any kind of fighting or taunting or even a sly pinch or a snide whisper was out. Patrick and Omri slowed to a walk, went to their places and sat down, trying to look perfectly calm and ordinary as not to attract their teacher's attention. Their breathing gave them away, though. "Well, you two, what are you puffing about? Been running?" They glanced at each other and nodded. "So long as you've not been fighting," she said, giving them a sharp look. She always behaved as if a little fight was a step along the road to hell. Hey, we don't like fighting. Neither of the boys got much work done during the morning. They couldn't concentrate. Each of them was too aware of the passenger in his pocket. Both Little Bear and Boone were restless, particularly Little Bear. Boone was naturally lazier. He kept dozing off in the dark, then waking up with a little jump that made Patrick very nervous. But Little Bear was scrambling about the whole time. It was during the third period, when they were all in the main hall listening to the headmaster, that's another name for the principal, whose name was Mr. Johnson, announcing plans for the end of the year show, that Little Bear got really sick and tired of being in prison and started to take drastic action. The first thing Omri knew was a sharp prick in his hip, as if an insect had stung him. Any guesses what he felt poke him? For a moment, he was silly enough to think an ant or even a wasp had somehow got into his clothes, and he only stopped himself from slapping his hand instinctively against his side to squash it. Then there came another jab, sharper than the first, enough, in fact, to let Omri let out a short yelp. "Who did that?" asked Mr. Johnson irritably. Omri didn't answer, but the girl sitting near him began giggling and staring. "Was that you, Omri?" "Oh, wait. Oh, I thought they were teasing him. Hold on. I got the wrong character. Was that you, Omri?" "Yes, I'm sorry. Something stuck into me." "Patrick, did you stick a pencil into Omri?" Such a thing was not unknown during assemblies when they were bored, so they've goofed around Patrick and Omri before. "No, Mr. Johnson." "Well, be quiet when I'm talking." Another jab, and this time Little Bear meant business and kept his knife embedded. Omri shouted, "Ouch!" and jumped to his feet. "Omri, Patrick, leave the hall." So the hall would be like the multi-purpose room for us. "But it didn't," began Patrick. "Out, I said," shouted Mr. Johnson furiously. They left, Patrick walking normally and Omri dancing about, shouting, "Ow, ow," at every step as Little Bear continued to dig the needlepoint of his knife in. The whole school was in hysterics, and Mr. Johnson was frothing with rage. Ooh, that's a pretty good description. You think of those adjectives, frothing with rage. I want you guys, if you get a chance, Google what frothing means, because that's a pretty good descriptor, and then tomorrow we'll talk about that and see what frothing with rage means. By the time he reached the swing door, frothing with rage by the time he reached the swing doors and departed. Outside they ran. Well, Patrick ran, and Omri performed a series of sideways leaps to the far end of the playground. On the way, Omri plunged his hand into his pocket, seized Little Bear, and dragged him out. The agony stopped. Safe in a sheltered corner behind some private bushes, Omri held his persecutor at eye level and shook him violently, the way you shake a bottle of medicine. He called him the worst names he could possibly think of. When he'd run out of swear words, which was not for some time, he hissed like Mr. Johnson. "What do you mean by it? How dare you? How dare you stick your knife into me?" "Little Bear dare. Omri keep it dark many hours. Little Bear want to see school place, not lie in hot dark. No breath, no see. What enjoy? I warned you you wouldn't. It's not my fault you made me bring you. Now you've gotten me into trouble." Little Bear looked mulish, but he stopped shouting. Seeing this evidence that a truce was on its way, Omri calmed down a bit too. "Listen, I can't let you see because I can't take you out. You have no idea what would happen if I did. If any of the other children saw you, they'd want to grab you and mess you about. You'd hate it, and it would be terribly dangerous too. You'd probably get hurt or killed. You've got to lie quiet till school's over. I'm sorry if you're bored, but it's your own fault." Little Bear thought this over, and then he said a most astonishing thing. "Want Boone." "What? Your enemy?" "Better enemy than alone in the dark." Patrick had taken Boone out of his pocket. The little cowboy was sitting on his hand. They were gazing at each other. Omri said, "Boone, Little Bear says he wants you. He's lonely and bored." "Well, ain't that just too bad," said Boone sarcastically. "After he tried to kill me, now he's come all over lovey-dovey. Listen, you," he shouted through the cupped hands across the yawning gulf between Patrick and Omri. "I don't care how lonesome you are. I don't care if you drop down dead. The only good engine's a dead engine, you hear me?" So Boone's not being nice now either. They're being enemies again. I forgot. I got to go back a couple pages real quick. I want to show you when that girl was teasing Omri and Patrick out there. You can see her shaking her finger at him and all the other kids looking around like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And you can see the boys kind of holding their pockets to try to hide them. So anyhow, Boone's not being nice, and Little Bear's getting restless. Little Bear turned his head haughtily away. "I think he's lonely too, really," said Patrick in a whisper. "He's been crying." "Oh, no, not again," said Omri. "Honestly, Boone, at your age?" Just then they heard the teacher calling them for the school door. "Come on, you two. You've not got the day off, you know." "Give me your knife," said Omri to Little Bear on a sudden impulse. "Then I'll put you together." With only a moment's hesitation, Little Bear handed over his knife. Omri slipped it into the small breast pocket of his shirt, which was empty and where it wouldn't get easily lost. Then he said to Patrick, "Let me have Boone." "No! Just for the next lesson. Then at lunchtime you can have both of them. They'll keep each other company. They can't do much damage in a pocket." Reluctantly, Patrick handed Boone over. Omri held them in one in each hand, so they were face to face. "Be good, you two. Try talking to the other instead of fighting. Whatever you do, don't make any noise." And he slipped them both into his left-hand pocket, and then he and Patrick ran back into the school building. So that's the end of chapter 11. I'm going to leave off there. We'll start on chapter 12 tomorrow. I'm going to see if I can find the table of contents. And how many chapters are there? There are 16 chapters altogether, so we're getting close to coming towards the end of the book. We're on page, let's see, chapter 12 starts on 143, and the last chapter starts on 211. So we're getting closer. I hope you guys are enjoying the story. I really appreciate those of you guys that have been watching, and I'm sorry that the last couple of weeks have been a little crazy between my iPad and me having to do a bunch of work. But Wednesday we're gonna do packets again. I was down at the school again today. It's just not the same without you guys. I sure miss you. Have a good night. We'll talk to you soon.